Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Transfigured. I'm here with Pastor Sean Finnegan. Sean Finnegan is the lead pastor at Living Hope International Ministries in Latham, New York, near Albany. And you are, let's see here, a couple other things. You are a board member of the Unitarian Christian Alliance.
Yep, it's true.
I believe you have a master's degree from Boston College or University.
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 The Methodist side, not the Catholic side.
And your master's degree is in something like church history, or what is
Early
it?
Christian history.
Early Christian history.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do, this is going to be sort of like a double episode. Maybe I'll clip out one part of it, but I wanted to ask Sean about what sort of his impressions are of the state of biblical Unitarianism at the moment. You've been traveling all over the world. You've been to a conference in New Zealand. You've been talking with some churches in the Philippines, and just sort of are, I think, very aware of sort of the situation. So I wanted to hear from you what you think things are like, where things are headed, and where you wish things were headed, or things that you hope for from the future. So Mr. President, what is the current state of the union?
Oh my goodness. We live in a time of great optimism. Thanks for having me on Transfigured. I'm such a big fan and enjoy the work that you do. Even some of the stuff that's a little more niche, I think, is really interesting. But anyhow, as far as biblical Unitarianism, I just distinguish Unitarian Universalism from biblical Unitarianism. Not to say that other people aren't biblical as well. It's not a slight against Trinitarians or anything. It's just biblical Unitarians are people that recognize the authority of Scripture to determine faith and practice, right? So biblical Unitarianism is growing like crazy. It's been around since the beginning. All Jews are biblical Unitarians, have been, still are. And Christianity coming out of Judaism, I think we can make a strong case that the New Testament is biblical Unitarian, and that a lot of the early Christians were as well in the first few centuries. But as far as in recent times, there have been a number of biblical Unitarian groups or denominations, and this has been very kind of difficult for many of us, because a lot of times we're excluded from institutions of higher learning. We're excluded from even just like camps that Christians would like to go to in the summer, and because
parachurch organizations.
Parachurch, yeah. I wanted to get health insurance at one point, and they're like, "No, you have to believe in the Trinity." I was like,
"What?"
Yeah. So they're like Christian health insurance companies, and so in kind of a hostile environment, it's hard to really build. But since the advent of the internet, since really the dawning of the new millennium, biblical Unitarianism has grown like crazy, like wildfire all around the world. And it's my privilege to have traveled to some of the different countries that most Americans don't get to. But it's exciting. We live in an exciting time. I think of it as a time of building, where basically organizations that have in the past built walls to protect themselves are saying, maybe we can work together. We don't necessarily believe everything the same, but on this issue, we can work together. And that's really been the work of the Unitarian Christian Alliance, which I helped to found in 2019. Of course, our first year, we got hit with a global pandemic. So didn't really do much as far as getting together with folks. But since we founded the UCA, the Unitarian Christian Alliance, we have been able to connect people to each other. We developed a website with a map and a directory where people can just find each other. There's no middleman. And that has really taken off. There are, I don't even know how many dots on the map now, hundreds and maybe thousands, honestly. And it's been exciting to see it grow. initially we had conferences in the United States, in Tennessee, and then Ohio, and then last year was in Arkansas, and I believe this year is going to be in Arizona. That's not fully confirmed yet, but it looks like that's going to work out for our October conference. So just get out there towards the West Coast and show some love to those folks out there. But we've had Unitarian conferences, biblical Unitarian conferences in the United States for many, many years. The UCA is new, but there have been plenty of One God events by various groups. But really what's more exciting, I think, is seeing the growth, not necessarily even growth, but like connection of different groups in other countries as well. So there are so many folks in the UK and Europe that wanted to get together, that last year they had their first conference in the London area, actually just in Windsor outside of London. And this year in Uxbridge, they're having their second conference, which I'm looking forward to attending in July. And that brought in people from Scandinavia, brought in people from Germany and Austria and other nearby places outside of England as well. And this was kind of like an exciting moment for like people to say, wait, I'm not alone. Wait, you believe this too? Wait, you don't want to kick me out because I don't believe in statement 1 on your statement of faith. So I think that was really exciting. There have been Unitarian events in England, going back to the 1700s, like the Church of England as a denomination almost went Unitarian. So this is nothing new, but it is something that we're seeing bubbling up and flourishing again in a time where persecution is a lot less. And I did get to go to the Philippines in, what was that? November. I think it was November, just a couple months ago, last year. And got to see a number of different house churches, mostly. Like there was one that was, actually there were two that were what we would call like brick and mortar churches. But most of it was just home groups. And there are so many different, it's funny, there are so many different biblical Unitarian groups active in the Philippines. It's not even funny. My own group, Living Hope International Ministries. Then you've got the Church of God. They have a group in the Philippines, and Allegiance to the King has several groups in the Philippines, and the Christadelphians have several groups in the Philippines. It's like everybody's got groups in the Philippines. And there's over 100 million people there. So, I mean, it makes sense. It's actually like kind of heavily populated place. Yeah. And so that was really cool to visit them. We also got to visit in New Zealand, and that was really cool because that was like a brand new situation with a family that just got on board with the biblical Unitarian understanding of who Jesus is, and then really started reaching out to others. And a guy over there named Zach Mayo contacted all the other individuals on the UCA map in New Zealand just by email, and then got them on the phone, which is kind of like a boomer thing to do these days. Most Americans won't do voice calls. It's like too intimidating. But Zach, he didn't have any problem doing it. And we went over, and there were almost 100 people there at that event in New Zealand. That was in Cambridge, New Zealand, which is the northern island, just south of Auckland, a couple hours. Auckland's their big city. And what's interesting too is that while we were there are all these Australians. I mean, not like tons, but like probably a dozen Australians who had come over. It's only a couple hour flight from Australia. Most of the people in Australia live on the east, this kind of the southeast quarter of the country. Although we did have a couple visit from Perth as well. And the Australians were like, yo, we got to do a conference in Australia. Like, we've got hundreds of people. It's going to be epic. And I was like, all right, that sounds pretty good. So we're hopeful to, and in talks with a planning committee, to do an event or several events on at least on the East Coast in 2026, about a year from now, in March 2026. And that will probably at least feature Sydney and Melbourne, but it also might include a couple of other locations as well. So, I mean, it's just like really connecting people to each other across denominational lines is what I've been involved in doing, at least with the UCA. And with my own group, Living Hope International Ministries, we're just like looking to plant churches. Like we just want to figure out, okay, where can we plant another church? And so we have been in negotiations with Zach and Kayla Mayo in Cambridge, New Zealand, and we're going to be having him come over to the United States in June. So it's a few months from now, 3 months from now, and do some training. We're going to have him visit Compass Christian Church in Louisville and kind of observe what Pastor Will Barlow does. And then we'll have him go over to Living Faith Christian Church in Rhode Island and observe how Pastor Victor Gluckin does things. And then he'll be with us in New York at Living Hope Community Church for a week. And, we're just looking to train him up and send him back and give them what they need to get this church started. And so that's exciting, and, just that we're only one group, but like a lot of other groups too are, I think, feeling pretty optimistic about how people are connecting to each other all around the world and seeing this growth. You have to direct me a little bit here, Sam, because I could go on and on.
All right.
Yeah. Go
Well,
ahead.
so let's imagine that I am a person who has recently been convinced of Biblical Unitarianism, or maybe I'm on the fence, or maybe I kind of think it's true, but I don't really want it to be true, or I'm wondering out if I were to really jump off the fence, what it would look like for me on the other side. If you're that kind of person, what would you recommend that they do?
Well, I would recommend they get on UnitarianChristianAlliance.org and make a free account and see if there's anybody near them. Because if there's somebody near you, the thing about Biblical Unitarians is we know we're a minority, and we know that the chances of us having a local church are low. So even individuals that don't have a local church are very willing to get together and support each other and at least have coffee and, maybe even pray together, that sort of thing. And then I would say the second thing, since it's 2025 and there's like an epic event occurring this year, the second thing I would say is, other than registering on UnitarianChristianAlliance.org, is to attend Converge in Cleveland, Ohio. That is going to be, so the website for that is convergefest.org or .com. I think we have both. But convergefest.org. And that is going to be a place where so many biblical Unitarians from all different groups are going to gather. And it's going to be just a really powerful weekend of worship and praise, but also preaching from leaders of all different groups. And so I think that would be like a shot in the arm, a boost for you as a new person to say, hey, I'm not alone. Look at all these other people. They're not all a bunch of weirdos. Some of them even got married and have kids. Like these are normal people. There's old ones, there's young ones, there's middle-aged ones. And I think that would be really helpful.
And that conference is August 1st through 3rd, 2025 in Hiram, Ohio, which I believe, if I remember correctly, is in the Cleveland area.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is correct. So, yeah, I think that would be just such a great place for people to go, unless you are living on the West Coast and you're like not able to get out towards Ohio, in which case I'd say come to the UCA event in October, which, we have the details are not yet well defined. So I have to hold off on saying too much there. But late October, West Coast somewhere, probably Arizona. That would be another great place. But then also, I think looking at online fellowship is a good alternative, right? A lot of people can do that. And we have a lot of those available on our website, lhim.org. The UCA also has a Facebook group where if you post on there, like you'll get more answers than you know what to do with. So that's a good resource to mention as well.
Yeah. All right. I would, second all of those things. All right. Last State of the Union question. What do you hope for the future for the Biblical Unitarian movement?
Okay. So I want to see us planting churches. That's coming clearer and clearer into focus for me. I want to see churches starting throughout the United States. I want to see churches starting in many other countries. We're Living Hope is currently involved in starting up 2 churches and also supporting several others that are in third world countries or countries that need external funding. But there's no reason why we couldn't be starting 10 churches or 20 churches. Like if there are qualified people and or even people that need training, and then if we can get the funding and match those 2 things up, like let's just keep doing that. And a good friend of mine put it this way, as far as like a good vision, is like, look, we want to have it be so that when our when the next generation goes to college, they can find a biblical Unitarian church, whether they're part of my group or a different group, in the within driving distance of where they go to college. So that's really what I'd like to see, is just healthy churches that are Bible believing. They believe in the Bible, but not the Trinity. That, that they're able to make disciples and be healthy churches is what I'd love to see. And I would also add like independent too, not like controlled by some mothership headquarters that's like, toxic leadership. I don't want any of that. I want to see that.
Voluntary cooperation, but good,
right,
strong, autonomous congregational leadership as well.
Yeah. And the way we're planning churches too is that if our main center here in Latham, New York, if we disappeared for whatever reason, these other churches would still be able to continue on. They are legally independent entities that are supported locally by the people that are attending those churches. So that's really, part of the vision too, is that there would be a robust resilience to these churches that are planted, and that it would just keep multiplying. And I know like some of them are going to fail. There's no way to like do startups and not have risk.
Starting a church is hard. It's a lot of work.
Hard,
and most of the time it doesn't work, in all honesty, even despite the best efforts and intentions of the people involved.
Yeah. And one last thing on this is I really love to see cities. I think there's so many churches out in the country, in the farm country and stuff, but cities is where the people are. And so like that, I think, is more of a priority that I see, is like just really targeting those cities. We've seen the Christian Disciples Church have some success with that. They have churches in Montreal and Toronto in Canada, and also Liverpool in England, and Melbourne in Australia, and a lot of other places in Asia, although many of those churches are underground and unlisted, because especially in certain Asian countries, there's a lot of persecution. But yeah, I think that's really the model for the future. If we're really going to make a difference, reach a lot of people, the city is where we need to be.
Yeah. And I'll say something that Sean won't, is that even if you don't live in the Albany area and this vision is something that excites you, you can find Sean's church website, Living Hope International Ministries, and support that if that is a vision that you feel inspired by and that you want to be a part of. So go right ahead and do that as well.
Thank you.